My family shut me out when I was jobless. 3 years later, they walked in and said, "You don't have a future without us." But when they saw my house and staff, their arrogance turned into silence. Okay, Reddit, I don't even know where to begin. This whole thing is a knot in my stomach, a constant pressure in my chest, and I need to tell someone, anyone, even if it's just internet strangers. I'm Melissa, and my family, well, they're a whole other story. Or we're a whole other story, I guess. It's hard to even remember what it felt like, that warmth, that sense of belonging. The smell of Grandma Rose's lasagna, the rich tomato and bubbling cheese, the way the air in her tiny dining room would thicken with the aroma, mingling with the chatter and laughter of a dozen relatives crammed around her too small table. Sundays were sacred. We'd fight over the last piece, playfully shoving each other, our elbows knocking against the worn wooden surface, a symphony of clanking forks and happy complaints. Christmas Eve at my aunt and uncle's was an explosion of color and sound. A mountain of presents piled high beneath a twinkling tree, its branches heavy with ornaments we'd collected over the years. Me and my cousins, a whirlwind of energy, tearing through wrapping paper, our shrieks of delight echoing through the house. The adults, their faces flushed with wine and merriment, watching us with indulgent smiles. I remember the feeling of soft carpet beneath my bare feet, the crackling fire in the hearth, the warmth of my aunt's hug as she pressed a candy cane into my hand. Every Thanksgiving, we'd pile into cars, a caravan heading down to Coronado Beach. The salty air whipping through our hair, the anticipation building as we unloaded blankets and firewood. The bonfire, a roaring beacon against the darkening sky, casting flickering shadows on our faces as we roasted marshmallows, their sugary sweetness melting on our tongues. We'd tell stories, some embellished with each passing year, our voices hushed as the stars began to pepper the vast canvas of the night. These were the things that mattered. Family. We were everything to each other. At least, that's the fairy tale I told myself. That's what I desperately wanted to believe. Looking back, the warning signs were there, like hairline fractures, in a seemingly perfect facade. Living in San Diego, the pressure to maintain a certain image, to project that effortless California cool, was immense. The big house, the fancy car, the prestigious job, these were the holy trinity of success in our family's eyes. It wasn't outright malice, not at first. It was more insidious, a constant drip, drip, drip of subtle digs disguised as concern. "Oh, honey, are you sure that English literature major is practical? What kind of job are you going to get with that?" my Aunt Carol would ask, her brow furrowed with feigned worry, her perfectly manicured hand resting on my arm. Or my Uncle John, patting my shoulder a little too firmly, would say, "Don't you think you should be aiming for a more prestigious firm, Melissa? You're a bright girl. You could do better than this small marketing agency." It was always there, that underlying pressure to succeed, to be someone measurable, someone they could display like a trophy. And I, eager to please, desperate for their approval, internalized it. I wanted to make them proud. I wanted to be that shining example of success, the one they could brag about at their country club brunches. I worked my butt off, chasing that elusive dream, sacrificing sleep, relationships, even my own happiness, believing that, as long as I had my family, I had everything. God, I was so incredibly naive. I remember one particular Sunday dinner, not long after I'd landed my first real job after graduation. I was so excited, bubbling over with news about my new projects and the clients I was working with. I launched into a detailed description of a marketing campaign I'd helped develop, my voice animated, my hands gesturing enthusiastically. Mid-sentence, my Uncle John cleared his throat loudly, interrupting me. "Speaking of clients," he boomed, turning to my cousin David, a freshly minted lawyer at a high-powered firm. "David was just telling me about this incredible merger he's working on. Millions of dollars involved, Melissa. Real money." The conversation shifted, leaving me stranded mid-sentence, my enthusiasm deflating like a punctured balloon. The message? Was clear. My accomplishments, my small victories, didn't even register on their scale of success. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing a smile, the first cracks appearing in the foundation of my unwavering faith in family. Then the bottom fell out. The company I worked for, the one I'd poured my heart and soul into, went belly up. One minute I was juggling projects, the next I was staring at a pink slip, my stomach twisting into a tight, icy knot. The world I'd so meticulously constructed, the one that validated my existence in my family's eyes, crumbled around me. It wasn't just losing my job, it was losing my identity, my worth, at least in their eyes. The shift in their behavior was almost immediate. The calls, once frequent and filled with thinly veiled interrogations about my career progression, dwindled to almost nothing. The invitations to family gatherings became less and less frequent, replaced by vague excuses. "Oh, it's just a small get-together, nothing special," my Aunt Carol would say, her voice laced with a forced casualness that felt like a slap in the face. When I did see them, the air crackled with an uncomfortable tension. Their smiles felt strained, their conversations stilted. I'd catch snippets of hushed whispers when I entered a room, followed by awkward silences and forced smiles. Their concern became more pointed, laced with a condescending pity that made my skin crawl. "Have you thought about maybe, going back to school? Something more practical?" my mother suggested, her voice dripping with a mixture of pity and disapproval. The Sunday dinners, once a source of comfort and connection, became a minefield of subtle digs and backhanded compliments. "It must be nice to have so much free time," my SIL would say, her tone dripping with sarcasm, while simultaneously showing off her new designer handbag. "Are you still looking for work, dear?" my grandmother would ask, her voice sweet but her eyes filled with a worried frown, as if my unemployment was a contagious disease. I'd try to explain, to tell them about the interviews I was going on, the networking events I was attending, but my words seemed to bounce off an invisible wall of indifference. They weren't listening, not really. They were too busy measuring my worth against their skewed metrics of success, finding me lacking, a disappointment. I remember one family barbecue, a few months after the layoff. Everyone was gathered around the pool, laughing, drinking, seemingly oblivious to the weight that pressed down on my chest. I tried to join the conversation, to force myself to be part of the festivities, but it was like trying to swim against a strong current. My attempts at lighthearted banter were met with blank stares or dismissive shrugs. I stood there, clutching a lukewarm beer, feeling like a ghost in my own life, invisible, unwanted. My cousin David, fresh off a promotion, held court, regaling everyone with stories of his latest legal triumphs, his voice booming with confidence. I watched him, a strange mixture of envy and resentment churning in my gut. He was everything they valued, everything I wasn't. In that moment, surrounded by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, I felt utterly and completely alone. The warm California sun beat down on my skin, but I shivered, a cold dread settling deep in my bones. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was no longer part of their world, their carefully curated tableau of success and prosperity. I was a blemish, a reminder of the messy, unpredictable nature of life, something they desperately wanted to ignore. It was a crisp autumn evening, the kind where the air smells like dry leaves and wood smoke. The San Diego sky was a bruised purple, streaked with orange and pink. I remember thinking it was beautiful, a cruel irony considering what was about to happen. My parents had called a family meeting, a phrase that had always filled me with a vague sense of dread. I drove to their house, my hands clenched tight on the steering wheel, my heart hammering against my ribs. I knew, deep down, that this wasn't going to be good. Everyone was there, my parents, my Aunt Carol and Uncle John, my SIL, even my grandmother, her face etched with a worried frown. They were all seated in the living room, the flickering fireplace casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The atmosphere was thick with tension, so heavy you would almost taste it. As I walked in, the conversation died down, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. I sat on the edge of the couch, feeling like I was on trial, waiting for the verdict. My father cleared his throat, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Melissa," he began, his eyes avoiding mine. "We need to talk about your situation." The word situation hung in the air, heavy with unspoken judgment. My mother took over, her voice sharp, brittle. "We're worried about you, dear. You've been unfocused since losing your job." "I'm looking for work, Mom," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "It's not easy, but I'm trying." My Aunt Carol scoffed, a sound like nails on a chalkboard. "Trying isn't enough, Melissa. You need to be doing something. You can't just sit around and expect things to fall into your lap." "I'm not sitting around," I retorted, my anger starting to simmer. "I'm applying for jobs, going to networking events." My Uncle John cut me off, his voice booming. "Networking events? What good are those doing you? You need a real job, Melissa, a career, not some hobby." "It's not a hobby," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "It's my life." That's when my SIL chimed in, her voice dripping with condescension. "Honey, let's be realistic. You're not exactly qualified for anything substantial. Maybe you should consider something less demanding. Retail, perhaps." She smoothed down her perfectly ironed skirt, a smug smile playing on her lips. My grandmother, bless her heart, tried to intervene. Now, everyone," she said, her voice frail, "let's not be too hard on Melissa. She's going through a difficult time." But my mother wasn't having it. She turned to my grandmother, her voice laced with exasperation. "Mom, you're not helping. Melissa needs a wake-up call. She needs to understand that she can't just drift through life. She needs to be responsible, to contribute." And then, the words that shattered me, the words that still echo in my mind. "You have no future without us, Melissa," my father said, his voice cold, devoid of any emotion. "You need to realize that. You're nothing without this family." The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at them, my mouth agape, unable to comprehend the cruelty of their words. The people who were supposed to love me, to support me, had just declared me worthless, a burden. The room started to spin, the faces of my family blurring into a grotesque, distorted mask. My chest constricted, making it hard to breathe. I felt a hot, stinging sensation behind my eyes, the prelude to tears I desperately tried to hold back. I wanted to scream, to rage, to lash out at them, but all I could manage was a choked whisper. How can you say that?" My Aunt Carol sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Melissa. We're just trying to help you." "Help me?" By tearing me down, by stripping me of my dignity, by telling me I was nothing. The anger I had been suppressing finally erupted. I stood up, my legs shaking, my voice trembling with rage. "Help me?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You call this help? You're tearing me apart. You're supposed to be my family." My mother stood up as well, her face contorted with anger. "Don't you dare raise your voice at me, young lady. We're telling you the truth, even if you don't want to hear it. You need to get your act together, Melissa. You're an embarrassment to this family." I couldn't take it anymore. I turned and fled the room, the sound of their voices chasing me, their words like daggers piercing my heart. I stumbled out of the house, the cool night air a welcome relief against my burning skin. As I drove away, tears streamed down my face, blurring the lights of the city. I felt like I was falling, plummeting into a dark abyss, with no one to catch me. They were right, I thought, my mind spiraling into a vortex of self-doubt. I was nothing. I had no future. I was alone. I drove aimlessly, the San Diego streets a blur of neon and headlights. The palm trees lining the boulevards swayed in the night breeze, their fronds rustling like whispered secrets, but I heard nothing but the roaring in my ears. I didn't know where I was going, didn't even care. All I knew was that I needed to escape the suffocating weight of their words, the oppressive atmosphere of their judgment. "You're nothing without this family." The phrase echoed in my mind, a cruel mantra, each repetition twisting the knife deeper into my gut. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were bone white, the leather creaking under the pressure. My nails dug into my palms, leaving crescent-shaped indentations, a physical manifestation of the emotional pain that tore through me. The tears kept coming, hot and heavy, blurring my vision, the city lights smearing into abstract streaks of color. I fumbled for a tissue, my hands trembling so violently I could barely grasp the flimsy paper. My breath hitched in my throat, each inhale a ragged gasp, each exhale a shuddering sob. I pulled over to the side of the road, the car shuddering to a halt near a darkened park, the faint scent of eucalyptus hanging in the air. Finally I let go. The sobs racked my body, deep, gut-wrenching cries that seemed to tear through me, leaving me raw and exposed. My shoulders shook uncontrollably, my head thrown back against the headrest, the tears streaming down my face, mingling with the remnants of my mascara. I tasted salt on my lips, felt the sting in my eyes, the tightness in my chest, the hollowness in my stomach. Each sob was a physical blow, a visceral expression of the devastation that consumed me. I don't know how long I sat there, slumped over the steering wheel, the car a small, trembling cocoon against the harsh reality of the world outside. The city lights blurred into streaks of color, the sounds of traffic fading into a dull hum, punctuated by the occasional whoosh of a passing car. My phone buzzed, a persistent, insistent vibration against my thigh. I ignored it. I didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to face the pitying looks, the well-meaning but ultimately empty platitudes. I felt numb, hollowed out, like someone had scooped out my insides and left me empty, a shell of my former self. How could they? How could the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, the people who were supposed to be my anchor, my safe harbor, say such cruel, devastating things? The betrayal was a physical pain, a sharp, throbbing ache in my chest that radiated outwards, spreading through my limbs, settling deep in my bones. It was the memory of Sunday dinners at Grandma Rose's that broke through the numbness, the image of her wrinkled hands kneading dough, the aroma of simmering sauce, the warmth of her embrace, then the Christmas Eves, the chaotic joy, the overflowing presents, the laughter that once filled the house. And Thanksgiving on Coronado Beach, the salty air, the crackling fire, the shared stories under a star-studded sky. Had it all been a lie? Had their love been conditional all along? A performance for the benefit of others? A facade of familial bliss? The thought was a fresh wound, a sharp, stinging slap across my face. Gradually, the tears subsided, replaced by a simmering rage. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, the sound echoing in the confines of the car, a small act of rebellion against the overwhelming despair. "Fuck them," I muttered, my voice thick with anger, raw with pain. Fuck them all. The anger was a strange comfort, a fiery spark in the vast emptiness inside me. It was something, anything, to hold on to in the face of such overwhelming devastation. I straightened up, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand, my gaze hardening, focusing on the streetlights that stretched out before me like a pathway leading away from the darkness. A new feeling began to stir within me, a flicker of defiance amidst the pain, a nascent sense of purpose emerging from the ashes of my shattered dreams. They thought I was nothing without them? They thought I couldn't survive on my own? I'd show them. I'd show them all just how wrong they were. The seed of determination had been planted, a tiny sprout pushing its way through the cracked earth of my broken heart. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It was a lifeline, a glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness. I took a deep breath, the cool night air filling my lungs, a cleansing, invigorating rush. I could smell the damp earth, the faint scent of jasmine from a nearby garden, a reminder of the life that still pulsed around me, even in the midst of my despair. I started the car, the engine turning over with a reassuring rumble, a promise of movement, of progress. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them define me. I wasn't going to let their words break me. I was going to survive this. I was going to thrive. And they would see. They would all see. The next few months were a blur of numbness and pain. I barely remember them, just a hazy recollection of sleepless nights, tear-stained pillows, and a constant, gnawing emptiness in my stomach. My family, the people who were supposed to be my support system, my rock, were gone, vanished, like they'd never existed. The silence was deafening. No calls, no texts, no emails, nothing. It was like I had been erased, wiped clean from their lives. The only contact I had was a terse email from my mother, informing me that they wouldn't be holding Thanksgiving dinner that year, citing unforeseen circumstances. Unforeseen circumstances. Right, like my existence had become an inconvenience, a stain on their perfect tapestry of success. I tried to reach out, a few pathetic, desperate attempts to bridge the chasm that had opened up between us. I texted my sister, asking if she wanted to grab coffee, but she replied with a curt, "Busy, maybe later." Later never came. I called my father, hoping to have a rational conversation, to explain how much their words had hurt me, but he brushed me off, his voice cold, distant. "We said what we said, Melissa. You need to take responsibility for your own life." Click. The dial tone echoed in my ear, a hollow, mocking sound. Their rejection was a constant, throbbing ache, a wound that refused to heal. I felt like a leper, ostracized, cast out. The shame was a heavy cloak, suffocating me, weighing me down. I barely left my apartment, the outside world feeling too bright, too loud, too much to handle. The days bled into one another, an endless cycle of despair and self-loathing. I lost weight, my clothes hanging loose on my frame, my reflection in the mirror a stranger, gaunt and hollow-eyed. My once vibrant hair lost its shine, becoming dull and lifeless, mirroring the state of my soul. My friends tried to help, bless their hearts. They called, they texted, they invited me out, but their words of encouragement felt hollow, meaningless. How could they understand the depth of my pain, the betrayal I felt? They had families who loved and supported them, families who wouldn't discard them like a broken toy. I pushed them away, isolating myself further, retreating into the dark cocoon of my despair. I didn't want their pity. I didn't want their well-meaning advice. All I wanted was my family back, the family I thought I had, the family that had turned their backs on me when I needed them most. I started to question everything. Was I overreacting? Were they right? Maybe I was a failure. Maybe I did deserve their scorn. The doubt gnawed at me, an insidious little voice whispering in my ear, feeding my insecurities, amplifying my self-loathing. I started to believe their lies, internalizing their judgment, becoming the very thing they had accused me of being. A worthless, hopeless failure. Then one day, something shifted. I was staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, disgusted by the hollow-eyed stranger staring back at me. The self-pity, the despair, the crippling self-doubt. It was all suffocating me, drowning me in a sea of negativity. I suddenly felt a surge of anger, a raw, primal rage that coursed through my veins. Not at my family, not this time, but at myself. For letting them break me, for letting their words define me, for giving them so much power over my life. I slammed my fist against the mirror, the sound echoing through the quiet apartment, the sharp crack of shattering glass a cathartic release. Enough was enough. I was done wallowing in self-pity. I was done letting them control my narrative. I was done being their victim. A new resolve hardened within me, a fierce determination to prove them wrong, to show them that I was more than they thought, more than they had ever given me credit for. I would rebuild my life, brick by painful brick. I would create my own success, my own happiness, on my own terms. And they wouldn't be a part of it. Not anymore. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. I was alone, yes, but I was also free. Free from their judgment. Free from their expectations, free to be myself, whoever that might be. The shattered mirror was a turning point, a symbolic shattering of the person I had become, small, diminished, defined by their rejection. I stared at the jagged edges, the distorted reflection of my tear-streaked face, and a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was like hitting rock bottom, that moment of utter despair, and realizing there was nowhere to go but up. I cleaned up the mess, carefully picking up the shards of glass, each one a tiny, sharp reminder of the pain I had endured. But as I swept the last fragments into the dustpan, a strange sense of liberation began to bubble up inside me. It was like shedding a skin, peeling away layers of self-doubt and insecurity, revealing a stronger, more resilient core beneath. The anger was still there, a simmering ember beneath the surface, but it was different now. It wasn't the helpless, frustrated rage of a victim. It was a focused, determined anger, fueled by a desire to prove them wrong, to show them and myself what I was capable of. I started small. I forced myself to get out of bed, to shower, to dress, even if I had nowhere to go. I started taking walks, exploring the hidden corners of San Diego, rediscovering the beauty of the city I had almost forgotten. The ocean breeze, the scent of salt water, the warmth of the sun on my skin. These small things, once taken for granted, became sources of comfort, reminders that life, despite everything, was still beautiful. I started volunteering at a local animal shelter, surrounded by furry creatures who offered unconditional love and affection, a stark contrast to the conditional acceptance of my family. The simple act of caring for these animals, of making a difference in their lives, however small, gave me a sense of purpose, a reason to get up in the morning. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to rebuild my life. I enrolled in a coding boot camp, something I had always been interested in, but never had the courage to pursue. The long hours, the challenging curriculum, the constant pressure to learn and adapt. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. I was pushing myself, stretching my limits, discovering a hidden talent I never knew I possessed. The doubt still lingered, a persistent shadow lurking in the corners of my mind. Were they right? Was I deluding myself? Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe I should just give up, go back to them, apologize, beg for their forgiveness. The thought was tempting, a siren song luring me back to the familiar shores of their conditional love. There were nights when the loneliness was overwhelming, when the silence of my empty apartment echoed the emptiness inside me. I would curl up on the couch, clutching a pillow, the tears flowing freely, the memories of family gatherings, of laughter and warmth, a constant, painful reminder of what I had lost. But then I would remember their words, the cold, dismissive tone, the utter lack of empathy. "You're nothing without us." The phrase, once a source of shame and despair, became a source of motivation, a fuel for my burning desire to prove them wrong. I started networking, attending industry events, putting myself out there, even though the fear of rejection was a constant knot in my stomach. I landed a few freelance gigs, small projects that barely paid the bills, but they were a start. They were proof that I could do this, that I could survive on my own, that I didn't need them. The doubt still whispered, but it was weaker now, its voice drowned out by the growing chorus of self-belief. I was building something, creating something, and it was mine. All mine. And no one, not even my family, could take that away from me. The fear hadn't completely vanished, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of excitement, a thrill of anticipation for what the future held. I was on my own, yes, but I was also free. Free to make my own choices, free to forge my own path, free to define my own success. And that, I realized, was worth more than all the conditional love and approval in the world. It's been 3 years since that night, 3 years since my family declared me worthless, a burden they no longer wanted to carry. 3 years since I picked myself up, dusted myself off, and started building a life they never thought I was capable of. And let me tell you, Reddit, it feels good. I'm sitting here, in my beautiful home overlooking the Pacific, the San Diego sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows warming my skin. The ocean stretches out before me, a vast expanse of blue, shimmering under the midday sun. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore is a constant, soothing rhythm, a far cry from the deafening silence of those lonely months after my family abandoned me. This house, this view, this life. It's all mine. I earned it. I built it, brick by painful brick, from the ashes of their rejection. My business is thriving. Remember that coding boot camp? Yeah, that turned out to be the best decision I ever made. I started small, freelancing, building a portfolio, slowly but surely gaining clients. Then, I took a leap of faith, poured all my savings into launching my own app development company. It was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. I worked my ass off, pouring every ounce of energy, every drop of sweat into making it a success. And it paid off. Big time. I now have a team of talented developers working for me, creating innovative apps that are changing the game. We're getting recognition, awards, even some serious investor interest. It's surreal, it's amazing, it's everything I ever dreamed of, and more. I have a staff now, people who respect me, who admire my work ethic, who see me for who I am, not for what I lack. My housekeeper, Maria, is a godsend. She keeps this place spotless, always greeting me with a warm smile and a plate of freshly baked cookies. My gardener, Miguel, has transformed my backyard into a lush oasis, a peaceful sanctuary where I can escape the pressures of the business world. These people, these connections, they're my family now. They're the ones who see my worth, who appreciate my efforts, who celebrate my successes. And then, they showed up. My family. Out of the blue, like they hadn't just ripped my heart out and stomped on it 3 years ago. The doorbell rang, and there they were, standing on my doorstep, their faces a mixture of surprise and, was that pity? My mother was the first to speak, her voice dripping with that same condescending tone I remembered so well. "Melissa, dear," she began, her eyes scanning my house, her lips pursed in disapproval. "We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd drop by. We're concerned about you." Concerned? After 3 years of silence, of radio silence, they were concerned? The audacity was breathtaking. My Aunt Carol chimed in, her eyes widening as she took in the view, the expensive furniture, the gleaming hardwood floors. "My goodness, Melissa," she said, her voice laced with a thinly veiled surprise. "This is quite something. How can you afford this?" The implication was clear. I hadn't earned this. I didn't deserve this. It was a fluke, a temporary stroke of luck that would surely vanish as quickly as it had appeared. My Uncle John, ever the pragmatist, cut to the chase. "Look, Melissa," he said, his voice gruff. "We know you've been struggling. We just want to help. We're family, after all." Family. That word, once a source of comfort, now felt like a bitter mockery. They hadn't been family when I was struggling. They had abandoned me, cast me aside like a broken toy. And now, seeing my success, they were suddenly family again? The hypocrisy made my stomach churn. My SIL, never one to miss an opportunity to flaunt her own perceived superiority, gave me a condescending smile. "Honey, we know you're not business-minded. Maybe you should consider selling this place, investing the money wisely. We can help you with that, of course." The thought of them, of her handling my finances, of them dictating my life again, sent a shiver of revulsion down my spine. My grandmother, bless her heart, seemed genuinely happy to see me, her eyes twinkling with affection. But even her warmth couldn't bridge the chasm that had opened up between us. The hurt was too deep, the betrayal too raw. I stood there, watching them, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. Their words, their thinly veiled criticisms, their condescending offers of help. It all bounced off me, like water off a duck's back. I had heard it all before, and it no longer had the power to wound me. I simply smiled, a cool, detached smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Thank you for your concern," I said, my voice even, steady. "But I'm doing just fine. In fact, I'm doing better than fine." I gestured to the house, the view, the staff who were discreetly hovering in the background. "As you can see, I've managed to build a pretty good life for myself. A life without you." The silence that followed was deafening. Their faces, once filled with condescending pity, now registered shock, disbelief, even a flicker of envy. They stared at me, their mouths agape, unable to comprehend the reality before them. The prodigal daughter, the failure, the one they had written off, was standing before them, successful, confident, and utterly indifferent to their presence. They mumbled a few more platitudes, some awkward attempts at conversation, but I barely heard them. I was watching their reactions, their carefully constructed facades crumbling under the weight of my success, their arrogance dissolving into stunned silence. It was a strangely satisfying moment, a quiet vindication of everything I had endured. They left soon after, their departure as abrupt as their arrival. As I watched them drive away, I felt a strange sense of nothingness. No anger, no resentment, no sadness, just a vast, empty space where my family used to be. They were strangers now, irrelevant to my life, their opinions meaningless, their judgment inconsequential. And so, Reddit, I ask you, AITA, for not feeling an ounce of sympathy for their shocked silence after they abandoned me when I needed them most. Was I wrong to cut them out of my life after they treated me like I was nothing? Because honestly, right now, all I feel is a profound sense of peace, a quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing I proved them wrong. I built my own empire, my own family, my own happiness, and they weren't a part of it, not anymore.